Hi, welcome back to Sound Living with Madi. Today we are joined by Lizzie DiSilvestro. She is a nurse, she is an artist, and she draws the connection through neuroaesthetics between the brain and art. So we talk a lot about how to create a healing meditative space, a space that sparks joy, and also how creativity can be a tool for self-healing. Let's get into it.
This is a Soak podcast.
Hey, I'm Madi, and this is Sound Living, a space for real conversations about intentional living, wellness, and personal growth. Here, we dive into practical tools, mindset shifts, and the little changes that make a big impact. Whether you're looking to create balance, build better habits, or just feel more in tune with yourself, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Hi, Lizzie.
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we have one of your pieces here with us today.
Yes.
Thank you so much for letting us feature it. I'm obsessed with this. I think that it would be great for our soak offices because of the colors. Can we just start by you telling us about this piece?
Yeah. So this piece it's called Access Point. And the most unique thing about it, I think, is that the surface of it is so highly textured. And a lot of my work focuses on neuroaesthetic principles. So trying to use my knowledge of neuroscience and the human brain to create pieces that are soothing and effectively draw our attention back to the somatic experience that we're having right now. So just bringing us back into our body, what's happening in this current moment. And one of the ways that I do that is with texture, because every time your eyes perceive texture, your brain interprets it as that felt sense. And not necessarily that your brain knows how it would feel, but it piques your interest and it does make you want to touch something. So I like with my work for the overall composition, the imagery with the paint to be kind of the small talk that draws you in, and then the texture and some of the symbols, the rudimentary drawings that I do on the surface, sometimes incorporating words, that is all kind of like taking the conversation deeper. So I want it to be beautiful from a distance, but reveal a lot of substance when you're up close and personal with the piece.
Oh, that's so good. So you are a nurse and you started out as a full-time nurse. Mm-hmm. What drew you to switch gears into art, and when did you discover how healing art could be?
Yeah, I've always been aware of how healing creating and observing art is for me personally. Just observing my patients throughout my time as a nurse and seeing the way that the environment in the hospital impacts them, that kind of opened my eyes to other people's interpretation of it, how it could affect them. But then really after I had my daughter, she's 2.5 now, after I had her, I realized that I wasn't willing to kind of go back and forth between the two or trying to make one happen while doing the other. It was like, I don't know, it felt like kind of a veil was lifted. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I want to do this full time. And because of having her, it was such a healing and eye-opening experience for me. It kind of gave me this massive fire in my belly and, I don't know, bravery, self-confidence that I think I was lacking before. Having her, I was told could be very dangerous for me or challenging. So I think going through the experience of being pregnant with her and having to just completely wall off negativity or non-positive thoughts for those 9-10 months, that was such a powerful exercise for me. And then I had her and it was like, oh my God, I have this whole complete incredible being. I did that.
Yeah.
I mean, my husband played a role too, but it was like my body made that.
Yes.
And having done that and experiencing that and seeing she looks just like me, she acts a lot like me, but I think having that external kind of image of myself and seeing people just really take to her and love her, and she has like this gravitational pull. I always say that like my husband and I are in her orbit, and it is kind of very true, but seeing the way that people react to her was healing for me as well, because I think a lot of the self-criticism that I have placed upon myself and putting yourself out there in the art world, you are opening yourself up in a vulnerable way. So a lot of that I had dealt with was kind of reframed as I'm parenting her and seeing her go through challenges and struggles. And I really realized that I am not comfortable asking anything of her that I'm not willing to deliver on myself. And if I want for her to be happy and joyful and follow her own passions, I need to be walking that walk first myself. So it's a slow ship to move. I will say that. The art world is not predictable or, easygoing, but that really last year started me down this more investigative path of how can I be making work that is more reflective of me, feels honest to me and my experience where I'm at right now. And then I kind of got that breakthrough of pairing it with healing and how can I make this more effective for the viewers or the collectors? Not just speaking so much about my experience, but how can I open this up to something relatable to a broader audience? And then from there, diving into a lot of the neuroaesthetics and using my background in neuroscience and epigenetics.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And one thing that I'm kind of realizing as you're talking is there's kind of a parallel between the art that you create and your relationship with it, and also your daughter who you created and your relationship with her.
Beautiful. I don't think I had put it in that so succinctly, but
yeah, just hearing you talk, it seems like you're talking about kind of expressing yourself through your pieces and then reflecting back on them. And of course, we all know children are such a mirror. It's something that we talk about a lot on this show, and that seems to be kind of a similar theme there too. So as a mom and as an artist, so Madi Peterson introduced us. Love her. We just did an episode with her, and her and I talked a lot about trusting your gut and your intuition as a mom, and with all of the answers that are available on social media and in articles and from different doctors, at the end of the day, the right decision is usually the one that you feel best about. And it sounds to me like you might have experienced something similar with your pregnancy journey. Would you mind sharing a little bit about that?
Yeah. So before, I don't want to be too graphic because I'm a nurse, and so that's
that's okay.
But before I got pregnant, or before we even wanted to get pregnant, before I was ready to have kids, I was having some pelvic pain, and I went to my gynecologist, and he was doing an ultrasound, and he tells me, you have this rare uterine abnormality called unicornuate uterus.
Unicorn uterus?
Unicornuate.
Oh my God.
So all uteri, I don't know the plural, start out bicornate.
Yeah.
So there's a septum in the middle, and then that septum dissolves. And for some people, it doesn't dissolve fully, and so you have to go in and have a procedure to remove it. Well, for me, in my case, I only formed half of my uterus.
Okay.
So I only have half a uterus, basically. And it's a rare condition that I think the statistic is like 0.02 or 0.2% of women it affects. I can't remember exactly. But long story short, that was not the source of my pain. He didn't think, but he was like, this is another issue that we are now aware of. And I was kind of confronted with the fact that, oh my gosh, didn't feel ready to have a kid. And now I feel like I'm facing this uphill battle. Mm-hmm. I'm behind the starting line. And he said, like you said, with all the information on the internet, right. He was like, most women don't know about this until they've had multiple miscarriages. Mm. So I felt fortunate that I learned ahead of time. But of course, being who I am, I go home and I'm researching like crazy and seeing all these terrible things about how hard it can be, how difficult it can be. Sometimes you are able to get pregnant and then you have intrauterine growth restrictions or what have you. So really like having to reckon with the fact that, am I going to be able to do this myself? If I'm not, am I still going to feel fulfilled, in my marriage, in my life, mm-hmm. in my role? Challenging a lot of things that I had not thought of previously. So that was difficult, but I knew at the end of the day that if it were just going to be Jeremy and I, this is getting deeper, but I was fulfilled. I felt very confident in who I had chosen for my life partner, my husband, but I did still want it.
Yeah.
And at that point, I was like, I don't know. I think this is still, I was terrified, absolutely terrified of the chance of miscarriage. I just really did not think that was something I could handle.
Yeah.
I struggle with anxiety and depression at baseline to begin with. So I was petrified, very, very scared. And then there was, some steps in between. I did end up, we started with some medication, trying to get pregnant. And then my doctor wanted to do the surgery to go in and make sure that I had both fallopian tubes, that everything was patent, to see if I had endometriosis, what have you. So he was like, let's take a beat. We'll do the surgery. And then after that, if you're not pregnant within the new year, we can start with IVF or injections, stuff like that. And I did end up getting pregnant over that holiday season. So,
well, it sounds like kind of despite all the information, despite the odds, you still had something even stronger within you that was persuading you to pursue the motherhood journey.
Yeah.
I think is really beautiful.
And I knew that for me, I had to just stop looking for more information. I think there comes a time when information is overwhelming.
Yes.
Especially as a nurse, someone who knows how many things can already go wrong with the human body. I was like, I need to learn as little as possible throughout this process. I need to just trust what my body's doing, because I know the risk to your health and the baby's health that stress plays when you're pregnant.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, anybody who has been pregnant and fulfilled that role or experienced that knows how many things already pop up in your mind.
Yeah.
I didn't need any more fuel for the
and
fire.
in your TikTok feed.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started. Yeah.
I had to start doing like the not interested.
Yeah.
Because I got really scared at the end of my pregnancy. I really didn't have a reason to, other than just watching everyone else's traumatic story on my
Other
For
than
You
you're
page.
doing the most impactful and important job that your body has ever done.
Right.
There's that.
Other than that.
Yeah. No, I know. My sister and I were both like my whole family were very like blunt, open, honest, and we love to give each other a hard time.
You can say it.
Okay, we love to give each other shit. But so my sister would send me all these like funny, memes or videos about raising kids, and I had to be like, okay, listen, I know normally I'm up for all of this, but right now you got to chill, because I'm working very hard to control my thoughts and protect myself from where I know my mind can go.
Yeah, well, you're creating this masterpiece, and I'm going to draw another parallel to art, but I would assume that you really have to protect your creative space and your thought processes whenever you're creating art too.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's probably similar in a kind of a different way.
Wow. Yeah, that's very insightful too, because another ongoing challenge that I face even still is, the benefit of social media and putting yourself out there, reaching wider audiences, but also understanding the influence that plays on you, comparison-wise, but the way that it infiltrates your style. My dad was an intellectual property lawyer, so I have all kinds of stories from him of copyright infringement, and his company dealt with like completely different scale of people like Taylor Swift and,
wow.
Netflix, like movies. So
Yeah,
not people on my scale, but I always hold in the back of my mind the importance of having your own voice and speaking authentically as a reflection of you and where you're at right now, not getting so much in your way, seeking inspiration from other people. I think it's an important way that we learn when we're creating initially, but it comes a time when you have to become your own source of inspiration and find that self-efficacy. And so much of that was gained for me through having my daughter. Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing. So you focus a lot on neuroaesthetics. Can you break that down for us? And then also kind of share how art actually impacts the brain.
Yeah. So neuroaesthetics is a new field of science that essentially studies the effect that aesthetic experiences, I like to think of it as beauty, the way that beauty impacts our brain, our body, our health, our behavior. So scientifically measuring, what does art do to you when you're looking at it, when you're creating it, when you're listening to music, when you're eating really rich foods, you know? I like to think of just anything that delights your senses. So using all of your senses, not just visual, to have a positive impact. I like to think of it as positive. It does measure also the negative impact. But how can we use that to our benefit? I think for me, it was such a natural connection to draw because I was, raising my daughter and thinking more critically about what do I want our home to be as a space that serves us, but also as the background of her life. What kind of environment am I wanting to create? But also at the same time knowing that my husband and I are very passionate about the fact that we are not leading a child-centered life.
Yeah.
We are leading our lives. We are incorporating her into our life. And we didn't want to, baby-proof everything and make it like all plastic and unbreakable. So it's a broader consideration of how can I use this environment to be soothing and peaceful and foster connection, but also how can I make it an enriching environment that does help foster brain growth and intellectual conversations and just help aid her in being a stronger, more well-rounded human. So for me, it's impacted my art because I was able to start studying some of the aesthetic principles as it relates to the brain. So incorporating texture and giving credence to things that I was already doing. So things that this is something really powerful, I think, with the study of neuroaesthetics, is that a lot of times critics will say that it's not beneficial because it's just proving things that we already know. But I think it is really powerful because a lot of times we are drawn to things that we don't understand. And sometimes that feels confusing or intimidating. But if I'm drawn to this because my brain likes it, or, something within me is telling me this is good for me, and relearning to trust that. And if we have the science that's saying, no, there are parts of your brain are responding to this, and it's also positively impacting your nervous system. It's calming you down.
Right.
I think we have gotten so far away from listening to the messages our body sends us, and it's because we want to just keep pushing harder and harder, or we want to do things faster or whatever. And if we can create a home environment that allows us to come home, completely recheck in with ourselves, recharge, and feel fully accepted and seen in that environment, so that you're able to go back out into the world and, live a value-led life, walling off anything that doesn't serve you.
Yeah.
Because that's really challenging.
Right.
And
it
exhausting.
is.
You need that sanctuary.
Yes, you do. And I love what you said there. You were saying that you guys really create a space that serves your family, which I think is really important because especially as new moms, there's a lot of pressure to go overboard and, have, put your beautiful new child in the center of every decision that you make. And I think that that's a really important part of integration into the family, but you have to serve your family. The parents need support. We all need a space that we're comfortable in and that, we're living in and growing in, especially together. And I was in your studio earlier this week and looking at some of your pieces, which are fantastic. And what I loved about one of your pieces was you started it with some of your daughter's art. So you put it down on the canvas and then that texture was there. And I think that, there's like a certain energetic principle to it being there as well. I think that impacts kind of the vibe of the painting. And it was so beautiful. And I thought that was such a clever idea to integrate that into your work.
Thank you. Yeah, I do feel that there is something special and honest about the way that kids create. And I hadn't really noticed that until I had her and was just seeing some of the art on the walls of her daycare and things like that. But it did remind me that I don't know. I have this theory almost that we start out with everything we need to know, and then it just all gets muddled or covered up as we go. And
Wow.
looking at Layla, I'm like, I want to have as little influence or, change on her as possible. I just want to maintain the goodness that she has right now. And when we think of art as self-expression, which not every adult artist is expressing themselves, but certainly kids, that is our most innate form of self-expression. How can that not be energetically felt after the fact? So whether or not it's staying visible, although she's like made some badass pieces that I'm like, I could sell that probably. I think there is something really powerful about maintaining that as a layer of the painting. And it also takes away the intimidation of starting with a blank canvas. So letting her express herself and feel comfortable in that environment, but also using it for me as fuel and reminder for why I'm doing this and the fact that I'm capable.
I just think that's so beautiful. I haven't stopped thinking about that since I was at your studio on Monday.
I love that. Yeah, and I've been working with a coach, and she is seeing this parallel. She's like, I think that's why a lot of women connect with your work, and whether or not I'm working to better highlight that and tell people, but I think it is naturally something that you just gravitate towards, because there are things that we don't understand that we feel.
Yes.
And that is one of the things that neuroaesthetics and combining art and science is helping us realize, that even if we don't understand it fully, you should trust it. Because above all, it's about protecting your peace and making choices that feel most authentic to you and feel right to you.
So what would you say to someone who's wanting to start kind of upgrading their space or designing it with their wellness in mind? What are some kind of mindfully centered ideas that they could do to implement into their space?
My first thing I always encourage anyone is to get rid of anything you don't like, anything that is not serving you. I think we need to be a lot more critical and discerning when we think about the physical things that we're bringing into our home and the thoughts and emotions that are attached to that. I think a lot of times family heirlooms or hand-me-downs, things that are willed to us, we feel this responsibility to keep them and hold them, not really considering the fact that every time you look at that, your body is responding to the memories tied to it, good or bad.
They carry energy.
They do. And what we know from science and the way that built environments affect us, especially children, because our attachment to physical places is formed from ages 0 to 3. We know that it's important for us to have elements in our environment that make us feel seen and are indicative and reminders of where we come from. But that's not always a positive experience for everyone. So I think analyzing our space through the lens of, is this somewhere that I feel seen as who I am, but also for who I want to be? And for me, that is like, if you don't like it, get rid of it. Yeah. Absolutely get rid of it, because you have to create space for something better to come in. And while that is there, you're not able to envision something better or something else existing there. So in the practical sense, but also that applies in life as well. So that's a big one. Natural light is massively important, just for mood stabilization, but processing calcium. Your body really needs natural light, vitamin D. It helps, regulate your circadian rhythm. There's so much dialogue happening about that right now. Incorporating plants or nature in some way. I myself cannot seem to keep anything alive except me and Layla. So
same
for me, it's some little moss balls or some driftwood, something natural, but again, something that feels authentic to you. So I use a lot of driftwood in my art. My family has cabins in Michigan along Lake Superior. So, but things that call you back to things that are important and healing. Nature is universally healing. I'm not really an outdoorsy girl or crunchy girl, but it is, you can't deny that looking at a sunset or having a nice view is soothing and peaceful.
Yeah.
So, incorporating, using those little hacks, things that don't overthink it. It's like you look at it and okay, this is going to feel nice. Texture.
Yeah.
Hugely important. Incorporating a lot of various textures. I think about the smell of your home being very, very powerful.
Yeah.
Your olfactory sense is really, really potent, triggering memories and emotional states. So I'm trying to play with this little experiment that I came up with, putting some rosemary oil on the little key ledge where we put our keys. So when I come into my house, I love our home. I love our, I've designed it all, and it does feel really comfortable to me. Smelling that rosemary first thing when I come in. So then maybe if I have rosemary with me somewhere else and I'm getting anxious or whatever, I smell it, maybe it will do something to trigger me, calm me back down.
Right. It draws that connection there to like your safe space. And that's great. And I'm going to back up a little bit because I thought it was so fascinating, your take on like keeping around things that are like, old or from, your heirlooms or from different stages and phases in your life, because I feel like we do feel an obligation almost to kind of hold on to that stuff. We have a huge storage unit full of this stuff. And it's so funny that you brought that up because we just went through it the other day. And, I had my daughter and my nieces, and my sister was with us too. They were kind of digging through all these old things, old photos, yearbooks, just all these different things. And it really did bring back a flood of memories and emotions. And I think that it's important to honor that and to process that and to hold a certain space for it. But I agree with you that when it comes to building your life, I mean, the only thing that actually really exists is like the beautiful present moment, right? And if we're working towards a beautiful future too, then I think it's really important to keep that in mind as we are, curating our life and our space, because we are the creators of our life and we do have control on, what trajectory we go down. I think that's really powerful.
But if all the visual cues in your immediate environment are telling you, remember when you did this? Remember when you were this age? Remember when you looked like that? When you had that terrible haircut? It
reinforces an old identity.
Exactly.
And if you are wanting to grow in your life, you can't constantly be reminding yourself of who you were, but rather who you are and who you want to be.
I also feel strongly about kind of limiting the amount of family photos in our house or pictures of my daughter, because I do want to be able to see her as the dynamic, growing individual that she is right now. I just think nostalgia is a little bit over romanticized. I know that
I agree.
It's so hard when they're growing so fast you want them to stay small. You want to keep them small. But when does that become, you keeping them small? And so I try to be intentional about only keeping recent photos on our fridge. And then in our laundry room, we have this like wall of all the Polaroids that we've taken recently. But like within the last year, beyond that, I need to put those in a photo album or they need to go somewhere else, because God, I don't want someone judging me off of who I was 2 years ago.
Right.
If I'm staying in the same place, we have a problem.
Yeah.
So,
I feel like that's such a unique take. And I think that that's something really important for people to hear. And I am really guilty of like going down the nostalgia rabbit trail. And I will actually spend hours looking at like old photos or like through the storage unit. And
oh my God,
my husband has to pull me out of it. And he's like, Maddie, we have a really great life right now. Like, let's focus on that and work on that. And, I'm living in the past. And the truth is the past doesn't really exist. It's the present moment, and it's where we want to go. And so I think that's a really healing practice.
I'm a very sappy, nostalgic individual myself. So I totally, but at the same time, it's like, it's not where you're going, I think a beautiful way to incorporate honoring layers of time and love is with vintage pieces in your home, because there is a sense of depth and history there. I love the idea that something has a past and it has layers to it. It doesn't always need to be your past. You don't want to be reminded of your past. So I think when we're making choices for our home, trying to buy from ethical, sustainable sources, vintage is a fantastic way to do that. And it also aids you in thinking about the circularity of furniture that you're buying and giving away. Not everything is meant to be forever. You know, you held it for this time. Let someone else benefit from that. That might be exactly what they need.
That's true about a lot of things, about art, about relationships, about homes, about, you know, just different stages and phases of life. And it doesn't make that particular thing good or bad.
Right.
It serves you in that moment, and vice versa. And then you keep growing.
Exactly. I think we have to kind of reframe what we think of as a life cycle. It is something that is, it is cyclical.
Yeah.
It is ever changing, and it is not constant. You know, the only constant is the change.
That's right.
So we don't need to hold so firmly onto what the outcome, the end product is going to look like. But yeah, in conclusion, hang some art instead of your family photos.
So I'm curious, is there like a specific color or pattern or texture that like universally promotes calm and peace?
That's really an interesting question, because I would say anything natural, but when I think of nature, all I think of is the vast, very amount of color. So, and then what we know about how the brain processes beauty tells us that your lived experience, your cultural background, the way that you grew up impacts so much of that. So also incorporating principles of color psychology, we know that red is pretty universally a symbol for alarm. But then we also look at the Chinese culture. That's a massive symbol of
good luck and
prosperity.
fortune.
Yeah. In America, white is purity. It's goodness.
Yeah,
it's,
wedding dress.
newness. Yeah. Actually, in Indian and East Asian cultures, it's a symbol of mourning, because they are used to surrounding themselves with such vibrant color, and look at their weddings and their celebrations, Diwali, everything is about color.
Yeah.
Color is goodness there. So the absence of color, white, that is the symbol of mourning for them there.
That's so interesting. So whenever you're commissioning a piece for someone, do you ask them certain questions? Do you get to know their background to like create a piece that is their intended outcome from like a neuroaesthetics perspective?
Yeah, for sure. Because I do want it to be almost that shared creation aspect. There needs to be so much of them in the piece that they are able to feel seen by it and comfortable and worthy in front of it. And then also having my hand in it, knowing that they came to me for a reason and a purpose. They like my style. But yeah, it's a lot about getting to know the person. And I would say I'm a pretty empathetic, intuitive person, so I can really get a sense of someone pretty quickly, but also learning to read through the lines and knowing what kind of questions to ask. So the color is important. I would say more so than anything, it's like, what are you naturally drawn to? What clothes in your closet do you actually like to wear? Right. Because they make you feel the best. Not what do you have in your closet, because we all know we have pieces that we don't wear.
Yeah.
So what do you gravitate towards as comfort? What makes you feel accepted and open? And then how can we mirror that in your physical environment? Because if those are the colors that automatically calm you down or make you feel confident, I think that's another interesting conversation, not thinking about the home as a whole, but each space, each room, what is the energy we want to feel here? And then, okay, what does that look like for you? Because what is soothing to me may be chaotic to you. My husband and I, a little bit different on those fronts. Yeah. He's like not comfortable with change. I'm like an addict of change. Right. So when you have a shared space like that, it is, I think, important to bring everyone into the conversation. I think a commissioned piece can be really beautiful for families, because it's a fantastic opportunity for the kids to take a sense of ownership. If they're helping to make decisions, we can do controlled decisions. We're not giving them free reign, but what color would you like? Or what symbols, thinking about your family values and what's important to you, how can we visually represent that? Yeah. So that you have this outward visual cue of what is important to you and what you're calling back to every time you're in that space. It's passive. It requires no effort. It is subliminal. We know it works. Not to get dark, but that's how propaganda works. That's how brainwashing works. That's why you go into Chuck E. Cheese on a Saturday afternoon and you feel like homicidal. Your environment impacts you. You know,
Right, yeah.
it sounds woo-woo at first, but
there's some real science
we've lived
behind
it.
right?
Yeah.
Human experience behind it too.
Exactly.
And I'll back up to to talking about wardrobe for a moment, and the colors that you wear. My sister and I recently got our colors done, which I would love to hear your perspective on, by the way.
I want to do it so bad.
It was great. It was so worth it. And what we found is that I'm a spring, so I wear like kind of like the bright, airy colors, and she's an autumn, which is kind of more of like the muted tones. And it's so funny because we both feel our best in those colors already.
Right.
And it kind of like reinforced that. And you know, when I wear one of my colors, 9 out of 10 times I have multiple people throughout the day being like, that's a great color for you.
Yeah.
And then that also, you know, it increases my, you know, dopamine and serotonin. And I'm not only, you know, happy whenever I see the color or, you know, I'm expressing myself through these different styles, but then I get that reinforcement from my community.
You move differently.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, you move differently when you feel when you feel beautiful, but not even in the physical sense, you know, the felt sense. When you feel like radiant, and if certain clothes have that effect on us, dopamine dressing, why would decor be any different?
Right.
And I think paying attention to what you do naturally gravitate towards, because I have heard that. And that's why I think I have a good idea of colors that look good on me. I'm actually not wearing any of them today, but we do naturally kind of know what feels best. The problem becomes in not over complicating it.
Yeah, I think we doubt ourselves a lot. And then I think we also look to others too much for inspiration, you know, the Pinterest boards and the Instagram feeds and all of that. But when it comes to like self-expression, just like with motherhood, you really have to lean in and know that your gut feeling is there for a reason. We have that intuition for a reason. Humans have been around for a really long time.
Yeah.
It's served us well. And I think really leaning into that. So kind of in that same vein, for someone who is wanting to express themselves through art, but they're kind of doubting, you know, they feel kind of like that imposture syndrome whenever they go in to buy an acrylic paint set or, you know, whatever it is. What advice do you have for someone who, you know, no matter if they're good or not, but they're just wanting that kind of self-expression? Where should they start?
I would say start at anywhere that feels the most accessible, because if it feels like a chore to do it, you're not going to keep up with it.
Yeah.
So whatever feels easiest. I'm a huge proponent of just starting wherever you're at. Use what you have. I was thinking the other day, like, don't we all have a planner that we intended to use and didn't use, or a journal that we intended to use and didn't? So using that as a sketchbook or a journal. You know, there are so many different art forms. I think when we think of art with a capital A, we're thinking of painting and drawing.
Right.
Baking is a creative act. Listening to music, playing music, you know, arranging a table scape. Like, there are so many different ways. Home decor.
Yeah.
So do what feels most exciting and expansive to you. And then I would say also using what already exists. I think Facebook Marketplace and thrift stores are fantastic resources for art supplies, because then it already feels like, well, I didn't pay a ton of money for it. So I'm, you know, you're not feeling like guilting yourself for using it. And somebody else is already getting rid of it. So, okay.
Maybe a little less intimidating than a blank canvas. Yeah.
Anything you can to lower the barrier of entry, I think, is great. And then just knowing that you're doing it for the benefit of the act, not thinking so much about the end product, what you're creating. Just really focus on feeling into what you're experiencing while you're doing it, and paying more attention to that, observing the way that you feel, and then, okay, I really liked the way that felt. Did I like the way it felt doing it? Do I like the way it feels looking at it?
Do it for the therapy and not for
Yeah.
like the end
Yeah.
product. I think people put so much pressure on
yeah.
the end product, and that kind of justifies whether or not they get to go through the creative experience of making it. They don't give themselves the chance because they're so worried about the end result. And, you know, I feel the same way. You know, anytime I've wanted to get into something like a painting or this or that, I'm always like, well, I don't know how it'll turn out. I don't know if it'll be that good, but that's not the point, is it?
No.
Yeah.
No. And it's an interesting conversation. You mentioned like we're all too outwardly focused on what other people think. And in trying to get people in my life to take on a creative hobby or whatever, I'm like reminding them that you should choose something that you would want to do if there were no other people on the planet.
Yeah.
If nobody were watching you, you would still want to do it. That is the hobby or creative pursuit that you should be choosing, because today's culture teaches us things are only good and worthy of our time if it benefits us financially or if it looks impressive. Like, we need to be doing more things that we like doing and less things that we like telling people that we're doing. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
It's not about the outward presentation or reaction. There is a lot of power in sharing those experiences and making something that can be shared. It's not that isn't a factor in the conversation, but that is not where it begins and ends. And that should not be, when you're just starting out, the only basis for continuing doing something.
Yeah. That actually kind of makes me wonder too, do you feel like the creative process kind of dictates the quote unquote value of that final piece for an artist that's like selling their pieces to the public, right? Do you feel like there's some kind of correlation between like that creative journey, the emotional journey, and then the value that they put on their work at the end?
I think that is something that is so hard to quantify, just because
I can imagine that would be really difficult.
It is tough, because looking at a piece, especially if you don't know the artist, you have no idea what they went through to get to that place, or how many hours they trained to be able to do that. I think minimalism is a very interesting kind of art to have that conversation with, because people look at it and they think, I mean, abstract art is the same way.
Yeah.
People are like, my 5-year-old could do that, or I could do that in 10 minutes.
Right.
And it's like, you should. We all should be doing it. But you have no idea how many iterations that went through to become that thing. The art form of editing a podcast, for instance, nobody has any idea how much work that takes until they have done it. Yeah. So it's very easy on the outside to look at something and say the inherent value is not there for it's not matching the dollar amount that they're asking. But then all that is saying is you personally don't value it as that much. Does that make sense? So it's I think more for artists about putting a price on it that makes you feel valued. And a lot of that has to deal with confronting, your personal views and self-worth. Yeah. It's difficult.
I love that you brought that up, because I have heard people say, oh, my, 3-year-old could have made that, but there's so much more, just like your art has different textures and layers. There are those emotional layers. And I think that it's really important to, know who you're buying from and have a knowledge of that. And it's a lot more than just a pretty picture. There's a lot that goes into it emotionally.
100%. I think in all things, support people that you want to win.
Yeah.
And if you don't like me as a person, I don't want you to have this really personal creation of mine, Yeah. I think thinking of art and, again, the objects in your home as companions, or almost as living, breathing things, not to get too in the weeds about it, but it does carry an energy, and it was created with backstory, and it is an outward reflection of an individual, a person. And I think we all need to be better at looking at someone and seeing the whole picture, not saying, oh, I like this part of you. Okay, well, that's fine, but they don't always show up that way. And I think abstract art is really powerful in that sense, because it is not representing one thing. And as your values grow and your lived experience expands, abstract art has the power to take on multiple different meanings, or you're seeing different layers. You're seeing things that you didn't see there before. So for me, I think for the longevity of the investment, because it is an investment, get down to the brass tacks of it, they're not cheap. I find the most bang for your buck in abstract art, or commissioned art, custom work. If you're going to invest, especially if you're a picky bitch like me, I would say go the custom route, because if you want to have that much control over the end product and make sure that it is something that fits your space and who you are, then that is where your money is best spent.
Is it hard for you as an artist to let go of certain pieces? And are there some pieces that you create with the intention of selling, but because of like the emotional journey that you go through, I mean, how do you dictate what you keep and what's serving you and what you sell or repurpose?
Yeah, that's interesting. Being a very self-critical individual, I would say that I'm able to part with things pretty easily. But after having my daughter and kind of discovering this new layer of my work and having it feels more authentic to who I am, it is harder to let go of it, but I'm also so much more excited to put it out there.
Yeah.
Because I'm a lot more proud of it. So I've kind of come to grips with the fact that more than anything, if somebody else can feel seen by what I've been through or what I'm painting and putting out there, I want them to have that. So it's either like I want to charge $10,000 for this, or I want to give it to you for free. Like I want you to have it so badly because I know how beneficial and how powerful it is. I struggle very hard with both ends of it, more so the giving it away for free. I'm like, what can I do to make this more accessible to you? And that's a good conversation to have too about investing in art. Always knowing that you can ask for a payment plan, or is there any wiggle room on this price? Because sometimes an artist has had a piece for 3 years and it is taking up physical space and they want to make space for new work too.
Right.
So they may be willing to discount it or have a conversation about how they can work out a payment plan with you or something like that. So I am just all about making it more accessible and less intimidating to people, while still making the artist feel valued.
I love that. Okay, so I have a few like rapid fire questions to kind of wrap it up. What is one piece of art or like an artist that has completely changed you or shifted something in you emotionally? Or changed the way that you see the world? If you have one.
Well, so the first one that comes to mind is Clifford Still, and he is a man, which is the first problem. No, I take so much inspiration from the female experience and women and female artists, but at the same time, I am still very inspired by men, especially like male hip hop artists. I think there's just this certain bravado and natural innate confidence that men have that women need to learn to occupy as well. We have to feel comfortable in that space. I'm no wilting flower myself, so I can see myself a lot. But his pieces are, the scale alone, they are so large, and I think there's something really powerful about standing in front of a work of art and remembering how small you are, feeling completely dwarfed by the color and the size, and knowing that that was made by human hands. I love the way that they look. They're almost like color field, but they feel like maybe rock formations or something. There's a whole museum in Colorado of his pieces, and they're just incredible. So that inspired me, kind of unlocked this reality that, oh, I love to paint big.
Yeah.
I like to go a lot bigger. It's hard for me to paint small. Even when I'm painting with my daughter, it's like an 18 by 24 sheet. We need to learn how to use your full body when you're expressing yourself, and the physicality that it takes to create a piece like that. It just it's so interesting painting something when you can't even see all of it.
Yeah.
It poses so many challenges artistically, but really, really inspired by his work and his use of color and size.
I love that. I'm going to have to check him out.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you could design the ultimate calming space, what 3 elements would have to be there?
Natural light, comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like torn between scent and texture. I'm such a I'm a smelly girl. I don't know how to say it, but I love to smell good. I love for my environment to smell good. I love like the natural intermingling of pheromones and artificial scent smells. But probably natural light, comfort, and scent.
I love that. That reminds me a lot of my mom's house. I love going over there. And I told this to her the other day, but growing up, one of the things that we always had scent-wise in our home was like the smell of cinnamon. And it just reminds me so much of like being a little kid and, carefree and all. And I told that to her. And the next time I went to her house, she had the cinnamon candle burning. And I almost teared up because it was just so nostalgic. And, she has lots of, windows, and it's very bright, and it is very comfortable. Like she designed it for essentially her grandchildren. My mom she's a designer. She's amazing. She's very artistic. But I thought that was so sweet of her. And I ended up buying a little non-toxic cinnamon candle for our home.
It's powerful.
It's so powerful.
I know. Like I can
takes you back.
Just talking about this, I can smell like my best friend growing up, like what her home smelled like.
Yeah.
Not that I know, but you can imagine it. Those memories are stored in your body and in your brain. And then, using those scents to call you back to that place. That's why I think sometimes we forget how emotions kind of like bubble up to the surface if we don't deal with them. And they come up out of nowhere sometimes. It's because our our body stores that information.
That's
and something
right,
triggers it. And if you haven't dealt with that, it's coming up regardless.
Yeah. Feelings buried alive never die.
Yeah.
That's great. So what is your favorite way to unplug and reset after doing a lot of creative work? Or is the creative work the reset for you?
Sometimes, yes. I have like creative pursuits that can take me away from my creative job. Yes.
Yeah.
So that it is usually something still with my hands. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this. I really like edibles. Or just like watching TV with my husband.
Yeah.
Just spending quality time.
Do you ever feel drained after like making a really big piece of art, or does it energize you? Does it drain you? I mean, what are you feeling like after you've done one of these pieces?
Both. I would say more so the energizing comes from like a creative breakthrough.
Yeah.
Because that feels automatically like weight is lifted, like you have more mental space. But then also like completing the creation of something, you're bringing something to life and considering all of its parts, you're trying to get your hands around something, and that is exhausting, especially if it's something that didn't exist before and you don't really know fully what it's supposed to look like. It is exhausting. And you care so deeply about it. So yes, that is exhausting, but really just like trashy TV. I love Bravo. I love, reality TV. We like true crime. We like Sopranos. We have a lot of comfort shows we love to rewatch. But I love movies and TV.
Yeah, just something that uses a whole different side of your brain than what you just kind of went through on like a more therapeutic level.
And that requires nothing of me. It's like somebody else already made this for me, and I get to just enjoy it.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that.
What's one thing that people could do to create like a more mindful life?
Observe what you're already doing. I think before we make any change or try to start any new habit, as we all do with the best of intentions, observe what you're already doing, because what you're already doing will tell you what you're capable of doing in the future. And how can you like tweak it a little bit to make it more closer to what you're doing or where you want to be? I think, observing what you're doing and how you feel about it, because a lot of times we're on autopilot and we're just saying yes to things that we are already doing, and we're not checking in with ourselves and thinking about, do I actually want to continue doing that? Why did I start that in the first place? Sometimes things change, like we were saying about the life cycle of things. Not everything is meant to be forever. You also don't have to win everything. Sometimes things feel good that you're not good at, and there's honor and value in that. So observe your surroundings, observe your actions and your emotions, and just pause before answering.
Yes, I love that. Where can everyone find your work?
My website is DiSilvestro Art. I can spell that.
We'll have it in the show notes.
Okay, good. Yeah. DiSilvestro Art. And I would say the best way to keep up with my work is my newsletter.
Okay.
On there, I'm really pouring into that audience. You never know with social media what's going to happen, or if it's even to reach people that follow me. I am on Instagram and
what's
Facebook.
Your handle on Instagram?
DiSilvestro Art.
And we'll link that too.
Yeah, down there. I would say Instagram, definitely you're getting a little bit more on the scenes, real time stuff, but my newsletter is more behind the scenes, in-depth look, and always keeping up with new things that I have coming out. I have some exciting projects in the works for how people can incorporate art making in their own home.
I love that.
So kind of working on some like collage kits and maybe an abstract course. Madi and I are working on an exciting venture of trying to bring like art therapy courses
to
the area.
I saw her post something about that the other day, and I was really excited to see that, because I think that, again, just like making it more accessible, lowering that barrier of entry, kind of giving people permission to try it out is it's like kind of the helping hand people need to get into the creative world.
Yeah. And we do all like instruction. We like a little framework. So how can we provide that for people? But yeah, there's always work for sale on my website. And then I try to tell some of the stories behind it on the newsletter and give people extra information.
Well, I'm going to have to sign up for your newsletter, because I follow you on Instagram already, and I love watching your reels and your stories, and it's fantastic. So everyone go and follow her on Instagram. Thank you, Lizzie, so much for coming on. I so enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, this was wonderful. You're like my ideal interviewer.
Yay. And that's a wrap on today's episode. If you loved this conversation, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it. You can find us on Instagram @Soak Podcast for more inspiration and wellness insights. Thanks for being here. And until next time, keep tuning into what truly matters.